So what happened was this medication is actually causing certain types of cancers. And so it was actually recalled. I mean, this isn't one where there were just a bunch of lawsuits. Yeah. It was recalled. You can't buy it now, off the shelves. And that was, I believe, in 2019.
I remember that like when that did happen is I went to the store. I think we were together and I was like, oh, I need some Zantac. And you're like, oh, no, you can't get them anymore.
Yeah, no more Zantac. No more that's causing cancer. And so the types of cancers that it can cause are bladder cancer, gastric or stomach cancer, esophageal cancer, liver cancer, and pancreatic cancer.
Wow, it's a wide variety.
Yeah. But again, kind of like within that general, as you can see how you're taking it.
Yeah.
So there are 79,000 lawsuits filed.
Prioritizing profits. Prioritizing
dangerous drug and product cases.
Welcome back. Another episode. Prioritizing profits, dangerous drug, and product cases. Another week, another show. We did take a little bit of a break last week. We still got something out. Fernie, the mastermind wizard himself, put together a nice little compilation. I've yet to see it fully through, but I did see some clips, and they did look fantastic. How are you doing? How was this last week?
It was fabulous. How bad could it be? We were in Las Vegas.
Vegas, nice.
Yeah, it was really good. It was a really, really nice trip. I mean, it was very different. I mean, the last time, like, everybody was there, which was really fun. This one was a little more low-key since it was just me and Peter and 1,000 attorneys. But
very low-key.
But it was really fun. In fact, let's see, Wednesday when we would have been recording, we were listening to Sting.
Oh, wow.
Oh, you know who Sting is?
Yeah, it sounds familiar. It's like Kiss, I don't really know who Kiss is, but I know everyone says it, and it's like movies, they'll reference it.
Well, he was like the lead singer for The Police, like big 80s band.
The Police? I didn't know the police department had their own head singer.
You don't know The Police? Roxanne.
Roxanne. Yeah.
Roxanne song and Every Breath You Take.
Mm-hmm.
The Stalker song.
Yeah.
I had a bunch of them. Yeah.
Not super familiar, but...
Message in a Bottle.
Yes, I've heard that one.
All right.
So
you've heard all of them, but kind of on the probably in the oldies realm.
It sounds like as much as I'm sure you love the podcast, seeing them live, I'm sure was a fantastic replacement.
Well, it was really good. It was kind of like, so the last time you were there and John Fogerty, he actually spoke at the lunch. So this was the evening entertainment as opposed to the lunchtime thing. But it was kind of a discussion. Mike Papantonio was interviewing him and talking about his life. He, grew up in the UK and how he, got into music and how he got his name and all kinds of, little stories, and then interspersed with him playing some of the classic music that we all know. And so it was it was a really nice experience. But that's what I was doing last Wednesday when we would have been.
So that's interesting that they kind of like intermingled those two areas, because you wouldn't imagine them having anything to do with lawyers or personal injury, mass torts. But it's interesting that they kind of bring them into the conversation, and I'm assuming it's more of entertainment value and like, a headliner essentially, where if people are on the fence about going to Vegas for that week, that might put them over.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the perks. They always have interesting people performing. Just one of the perks of going. And then also, if you're going to Vegas, you kind of feel like you need to see a show or some entertainer. Yeah, pretty much. Actually, we had double billing this time because Paris Hilton was there as well.
Wow.
Yeah, and so we're going to get into that in detail when we talk about cases we're taking, because she was there about cases that she thinks we should take. And in fact, she was kind of pitching to 1,000 attorneys.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Again, another person that I wouldn't imagine having much skin in the game or really being interested in this kind of area. But I think it's great to see. I mean, it is very important, and it's good that it's coming to the attention of not only just everyday people, but also people that are famous and that kind of control the minds of a lot of everyday people. So.
Well, and just that, I mean, lawyers get a bad rap, and
Yeah.
a lot of people don't want to hang out with lawyers, so it's kind of nice when you see people.
People want to hang out with us. It's really nice.
I know. We're not evil, horrible people. We do a lot of good in the world. And, and that's the thing about Mass Torts Made Perfect. And one of the reasons I really enjoy going is, it's a group of attorneys who really, I mean, they're committed to changing the world in a big way, as opposed to like one car accident case at a time. I mean, really changing policies, protecting, huge groups of people from these pharmaceutical companies. Yeah. So I always get very, impassioned and re-inspired whenever I go. And it's an opportunity to learn about what the new things are.
It's interesting that you mentioned policy. Is that something that they discuss about, lobbying politicians to kind of set up some more restrictions or some more oversight over some of these pharmaceutical companies that have, especially, the ones that we hear so often, Johnson & Johnson being a big one, these pharmaceutical companies that are kind of messing up back to back?
Yes, and it's actually, we're going to hit on, that's a really good question and very intuitive of you, because there's a few things that we're going to be talking about tonight that really go to how the lawsuits affect change in policies, in laws, that sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, oftentimes the lawyers are the ones who kind of start the ball rolling, where the lawsuits start happening, and that's when people start looking at things. And state representatives and politicians want to get involved. They see, oh my gosh, this is a really huge problem. And again, when we talk about the troubled teen industry that we're going to get into, without the lawsuits, people wouldn't know this was happening, and they wouldn't start, these whole movements. And so I think that does happen, quite often. There are certainly, I mean, like, for example, American Association for Justice has a whole lobbying kind of arm of it that does lobby for actual law changes. But that's a little bit different process. I mean, it's definitely one way to go. But then, just getting these lawsuits out there, getting the publicity, letting people know that it's a problem and it's a big problem, that really instigates a lot of change.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it's an interesting topic. I've always been interested in lobbyists and lobbying and how that whole dynamic works. I did think of it as a potential career path. Maybe I'll revisit it. But I think it looks a lot more glamorous, or it sounds a lot more glamorous on the news, or when you hear people kind of complain about it. I'm personally against it. I think it's a sticky situation. Don't want to get into it. But what we should get into is...
Whoa, we haven't heard what's going on with you.
Oh, I mean, nothing too crazy. Next week, a week from Saturday. So I think when this releases, it'll be the upcoming weekend. I'll be going to Amsterdam, New Amsterdam. Very excited. Europe, never been there. I've been to Europe.
I was going to say, wait a minute.
Went to Portugal last year, New Amsterdam this year. It's for a pretty big NFT event. It's pretty much the biggest for what I do, which is Solana, NFTs, a little bit of Ethereum. It's called Breakpoint. And they have it every single year, and they always host it in fantastic places. Last year was Lisbon, Portugal, and then we went to Paris after that, just because we were right around the corner as well.
Just because it's Paris.
Yeah. And this year is in New Amsterdam, which obviously I've heard fantastic things about. I'm sure you've went before.
I've not actually been to Amsterdam.
My dad went a few times. He absolutely loves it. And then also, you always hear the stories, red light district and the marijuana being legal before it was legal here, though.
Right. I mean, it used to be like a big thing. People are like, oh, they're so excited. They're going to go to Amsterdam. And how crazy is it? You can just walk around and you can just go into places and there's like a menu of marijuana options and it's legal and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, that's kind of old news now.
Yeah. Now, but what is new news? Mushrooms.
Are those legal now?
Yeah. Yeah, psychedelic mushrooms are legal, so you can do essentially the same thing as dispensaries, but for...
Man, that's a little more intense. I mean, that's a...
Yeah.
Well, and it's so interesting too because there's so much in the news these days about using psilocybin, the active ingredient in the mushrooms, for mental health issues, and really using it medically. But again, that's not legal yet, and so maybe it's kind of the same thing. It's legal in Amsterdam, and then the states will start potentially legalizing it medically, and then after that, maybe it will even go to recreational, like the way of marijuana. I don't know.
Who knows? I mean, kratom, another plant. That's that's out there. You got dispensaries of that. Why not?
People get all hot and bothered about that.
I know. I am excited, though. It is a little bit of a business trip just because it's more networking.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be having any necessarily like big meetings there, but going for the grants program that I'm currently working on and leading with Monkey DAO. That we work with Solana Foundation, so going to be meeting up with them. And then it's kind of like an opportunity for all of these organizations and communities that have been talking for, years and years, or at least the last year since the last one, all these newcomers to come together and meet IRL. And so there's always a ton of IRL events, just people who have never seen each other or never met in real life, and then they finally get this opportunity. So a lot of organizations host events, and Monkey DAO has, I think, 4 events. Which me and Christina got VIP passes.
But of course, you are a VIP monkey.
VIP pass, you gotta do what you gotta do. So we get for sure spots at all of the events, which is fantastic. It can kind of become mayhem when you have thousands of people trying to get into a 100-person event. That excited for that. And then I barely got us into the first NFT NYC. I don't know if you remember, there was the Magic Eden yacht party.
Oh, I remember you sent me pictures of you guys on the yacht.
Yeah. And it's not, it's a yacht, I guess, but it's more of like a miniature cruise ship. I mean, there's like floors to it. It's absolutely massive. And so they're doing another one of those, and I got us both into that as well. So more networking, a little bit of socializing and hanging out and having a good time, and then also sightseeing because I've never been there before, so I want to experience the culture and the food.
Yeah, well, I would think it would be a good opportunity also just because, most people who work in that whole industry, it's almost like little gig kind of things. Nothing's like it's
very contract work.
Yeah, so it's not like a full-time job, but you can meet people and maybe learn about opportunities and maybe other areas, within the whole ecosystem that you could get involved in. Because I know you're looking for a little more more action.
I think that's a great way to put it because there definitely is there are consistent like jobs and consistent businesses and organizations obviously that are ongoing. But a lot of the specific work, especially that I do, a lot of advisory and just kind of niche area is stuff where people only do it once or twice, or each organization does it. Like, for example, releasing a collection. People aren't just going to keep releasing them. So it is a great opportunity for that. And it's nice now because back when I went last year and then NFT NYC the year before that, I've just continued to grow my resume and my experience and making connections. And so now I actually have something to bring to the table. Before it was like, oh, please give me a shot. Now it's...
Well, you had a lot to bring to the table. It just wasn't as obviously on a resume, but...
it couldn't put it down on paper, at least.
Exactly. It was...
but looking forward to it. It's going to be gone for a week, so I think we are going to miss another show there.
Yeah.
But we'll put up some other content, and until then, just prepping for it, getting ready, and doing what you got to do.
All right. Well, that's very exciting. I'm excited for you guys.
Let's hop into it, though.
Let's hop into it.
Let's start with updates on cases.
Yeah. So this is big, exciting news, and this was kind of like, breaking at the conference. In fact, I was in one of the meetings, and there's all this like, what's going on? And what had happened is in the Zantac litigation, there was a case, one of the bellwethers that was getting ready to go to trial in November, and it settled.
Wow.
Yeah, and so everybody's like, ooh, this means it's going to settle. And subsequent to that, it does look very much like this litigation will likely settle probably in the first quarter of next year.
Wow.
There's actually analysts, financial analysts figuring out what they think is going to happen. And this is GSK is the manufacturer, GlaxoSmithKline. And so they're, people are watching their stocks, and the stocks went up a little bit after they settled this case. And again, I think that they settled it out of concern that if they had a huge verdict, I mean, that makes the stock prices drop.
Yeah.
And then also, it doesn't really bode well for the 79,000 other cases.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So, and this is a litigation that's been going on for a while. But the really important thing about this that we really want to emphasize is that when something like this happens, there are signs that the case is going to settle. This is the time, if you have a case, you really need to get involved. It's like now or never. Once there's a settlement inked, generally speaking, if you don't have a signed fee agreement, you can't take new clients. They will not be eligible to participate in the settlement. And so if people all of a sudden hear, whoa, there's a big settlement, and they start calling, that's exactly what's been happening to us with the 3M over the last several weeks.
Yeah.
People hear about it on the news that it's settled, and then they can't get a lawyer to take their case. And so, this is it. Newsflash, Zantac litigation is probably settling. If you have a Zantac case, you need to get to an attorney ASAP. Don't miss out. Serious stuff.
And can you give us a quick overview for anyone that might have forgotten, or maybe this is their first time listening, of the Zantac case? What are some of the issues? What should you be keeping an eye out? How do you know if you have a case?
Yeah, so absolutely. So Zantac, if you recall, is a medication that was originally prescription only, and it was for like acid reflux.
I took that.
You took it, and most people took it. I took it for a really long time when it was still prescription. Because it worked really well.
It did. It was really nice. I remember it's at nighttime when you're laying down and your stomach's just burning up, especially if you eat kind of late. It messes it up, and that would always fix it.
So heartburn so it was a medication. And so what happened, and there were all the problems with the PPIs, which are the proton pump inhibitors, which was a different antacid type of medication, heartburn medication. And those became problematic. And so everybody was like, oh, take Zantac. Then it came out that basically the active ingredient is something called ranitidine, and it can break down over time. It's an unstable molecule is how they word it, and
that's unsettling. Unstable molecule.
I know, it sounds like it could blow up.
Yeah.
Well, it won't blow up, but it could give you cancer. So probably worse. And so what happens then is it's contained within ranitidine is something called NDMA. So it's not MDMA.
Yeah.
NDMA. And I'll try.
I'm glad that you're very specific there. I got a little excited. Like, shit, can I get some of this Zantac?
People were having a good time on it. They were going to raves, and their stomachs felt great. And
I see why their stock price went up.
Yeah. So it's nitro satamethylamine. Anyway, it's NDMA. They don't need to pronounce it, but that is a probable human carcinogen. So what happened was this medication is actually causing certain types of cancers. And so it was actually recalled. I mean, this isn't one where there were just a bunch of lawsuits. It was recalled. You can't buy it now, off the shelves. And that was, I believe, in 2019.
I remember that like when that did happen is I went to the store. I think we were together, and I was like, "Oh, I need some Zantac," and you're like, "Oh no, you can't get them."
Yeah,
anymore.
no more Zantac. No more that's causing cancer. And so the types of cancers that it can cause are bladder cancer, gastric or stomach cancer, esophageal cancer, liver cancer, and pancreatic cancer.
Wow, it's a wide variety.
Yeah. But again, kind of like within that general, as you can see how you're taking it.
Yeah.
So there are 79,000 lawsuits filed.
And it almost sounds like all of those lawsuits have to be connected to cancer. Are there, less serious side effects?
Well, primarily it's a carcinogen, so no, it would basically be a cancer or some precancerous condition. And, and again, unfortunately, there are oftentimes, some duplicative filings in there where somebody hired 2 or 3 attorneys. We've had that happen before. People get a little crazy online filling out forms. And then there's going to be, some cases, sometimes people will file other cases that aren't cancers, and ultimately those are probably not going to be successful. But the majority of them are probably viable cases. And there are probably a lot of cases out there still where people have been diagnosed with one of these types of cancers and never heard about it potentially being related to the ranitidine, to the Zantac. So there may be people who have suffered one of these types of cancers, and if they hear about this, they might be like, "Oh, wait a minute, I did take this," and it was prescription for many, many years, and then it was over the counter. So there are records from prescriptions, but then also, as long as you can testify about where you purchased it and how often you used it and that sort of thing. And oftentimes, too, even though it was over the counter, it'll be in medical records where you're discussing with your doctor your issues, and they'll say, "Oh, just buy Zantac."
Yeah, I was going to ask is how would you know that it's directly correlated? Because I know, for example, with mesothelioma, there's a specific type of cancer. Like you can actually see in the molecules if it's directly connected, and it's a close and shut case essentially. This it doesn't seem like that's a situation. It's more you just have to kind of make the connection if you've used it and then you have one of these cancers, and especially if you used it a lot. Then it's more than likely.
Yeah, I mean, what they do is you'll look at what your other potential risk factors are. If you have a lot of other risk factors, then your case is not going to be as strong. And usually in the global settlements, that's how they quantify the case, how they determine the value, or tier them, or give them points depending on how it's set up.
Points, like it's a game.
Well, but then there's you take away points, depending on if you were a smoker, if you had certain other chemical exposures, that sort of thing that could contribute to this type of cancer. And then the people who have stronger cases, who are younger, who don't have other risk factors, their cases are going to be strong. And then it's also going to have to do with how much you took and for how long of a period. I mean, if you took it once in a while, infrequently, that's not a great case. If you were somebody who really had stomach acid issues and you were taking it on a daily basis, for months and years, that's a stronger case. So, but again, this is a situation where we all agree this is a dangerous medication. It has been recalled. It is not on the shelves. You cannot buy it anymore. And we know that it's linked to these specific cancers. Yeah. So I would say it is expected that this global settlement is going to happen and is going to happen relatively soon. And it's interesting too. We've had a real rash of calls recently, and I'm not entirely sure why that is, because I haven't seen until this. I mean, the kind of news I look at, I'll see, some rumblings about what's happening, but it's not in like mainstream media.
No, of course.
So I'm not really sure why people were all of a sudden reaching out, but the people that have reached out, now we're calling them back and saying, hey, let's get this information in more quickly. Yeah. Time is really of the essence here. And again, to anybody out there, if you or anybody has one of these types of cancers, were you using this medication? Because there's certainly a good chance that it caused or contributed to the cancer.
Yeah, I mean, and it's so scary too, because this was something that was over the counter, and like we said, like I was using it, you were using it, and
who doesn't have heartburn or I don't know, stomach acid at times? I mean, stress. I mean, I can remember years ago, and again, that was when it was prescription. But I mean, my stomach was just in agony. I mean, I was working crazy hours, really stressed out, and I mean, that's what got me through.
Yeah.
It worked well.
Well, and I think it's one of those situations where you wouldn't assume that there would be any connection there. You'd have no idea unless you hear about it, or unless someone tells you that you should take a look at it. And those cancers are very specific to the area that it would affect. So if anyone has any of those, what were they again?
Bladder cancer, gastric stomach cancer, esophageal cancer, liver cancer, and pancreatic cancer.
Yeah, so if anyone has any of those, then it makes sense to just reach out and at least see if you were taking Zantac at any point, over the counter, prescribed, then at least kind of look into it. Because it's good news that it's settled early. I mean, and that's a pretty big deal. These bellwether cases are essentially, a look into what the larger scheme, the larger cases, bigger picture is going to look like.
Right, like a sample case.
A sample case,
what they could expect in the way of verdicts. And that's so them wanting to settle this, it's like, I think they were scared. I think, because again, a huge verdict would then make the value of all of the cases go up.
Yeah.
And if they thought it was going to be a defense verdict, I don't think they would have settled it.
Well, and it's interesting too. You said that their stock price went up after they settled it. I would have imagined it would be the other way around because it looks like they're about to have to do a big payout soon.
Well, I mean, I think stock prices kind of go up and down daily.
Yeah.
And so whenever something happens, they'll go up or it'll go down a little bit. But it's just an indication that the markets notice this. And so this this risk has gone away. The risk of next month there being a big verdict.
Yeah.
Has gone away. And also it would bode well for them to potentially settle the case in what they would consider a more reasonable amount. But I mean, suppose they get a verdict for, $10 billion against them. Oh, holy shit, your stock's going to go crash, right?
Yeah.
And then, I'm being crazy with 10 billion, although, see, $5 million or something like that. And then, you look at, and there's 79,000 of those.
Yeah.
Shit.
That's a lot.
And then you're going to see the stock go down and stay down. So, making this move was smart on their part.
That makes sense. And it's good. It's so interesting too, because before we, last episode, before you left, we were talking about how you can kind of find out about some of these little things and what's going on and stuff before it necessarily gets out to the wider public. And this seems like one of those situations. You mentioned you went into the room, you heard whispering, you're wondering what was going on. You went to a back table, asked someone what was going on, and you heard these details.
Yeah, well, and then it's in the news, but it's not like a big blasting news thing like a huge verdict would be. Just the fact that they settled a case that's not going to go to trial.
And most people wouldn't think much of it if they didn't know what it actually meant.
No, I mean, it's going to be in the news that I follow, but it's not going to be in the news. It's not going to be on Channel 4 or NBC or something. They're not going to be talking about it, but they would be talking about a big old verdict.
All this propaganda news, I'm telling you. They won't tell us what we need to know.
Okay. Anyway, that's really good news. Good news for all of the people who've already got their claims filed, or for people who are getting involved now. But again, I just don't want this to be a situation like 3M, where when the news comes out that a settlement's happened, damn it, it's too late.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I feel like this is just going to be kind of the consistent story here, is as these cases that have been going on for a long time now, and a lot of them got kind of hung up during COVID with the lockdown and everything. But now with everything getting back on track and these settlements getting closer, it's even more important for people to reach out, because once that settlement date comes, then like you said, it's too late. The attorneys aren't able to take any more cases after that. Yeah,
and just to be clear, it's too late to be involved in that settlement. I mean, in theory, as long as your statute of limitations hasn't run, you could still file an individual lawsuit. But man, it's that now you're going to be looking at 5, 6, 7 years in litigation and all of that. Whereas getting involved in the settlement, once it settles, that's going to move pretty quickly, and you're going to get resolved. And the other nice thing about this too is that some of these people have filed cases, 4 years ago. If somebody gets involved now, they get their case filed, they might get it settled within a year or paid out even close to that. That's true. That's pretty amazing in these types of cases.
That's crazy.
So jump in now.
And I'm assuming cases like this are pretty big payouts if they're all cancer-based. Right?
Well, yeah. I mean, cancer is pretty horrible. And some of these, I mean, for example, pancreatic, I mean, is almost always terminal because it's so hard to catch it early on. And then, the other cancers, again, if you catch them really early, they may be survivable, treatable. But it's what you go through is really devastating in any of these types of conditions. So yeah, they should be relatively high dollar cases would be my expectation. Again, stronger depending on how well, how much you used, how long you used it, and other risk factors. I mean, as in any case, the strength of your case is going to vary on your individual circumstances.
Well, it's an unfortunate situation, but it is good news for that situation.
Oh yeah.
And definitely looking forward to hearing more about that. It looks like hopefully it's around the corner. It's funny that you said, financial analysts are kind of doing all their homework right now to figure out how close it's coming, if it's going to happen, all of the details of it, trying to predict the future, which makes sense. I mean, this is a big deal. And
a big company.
A big company, and it will...
Lots of investors.
Lots of investors will make some waves. I do want to make sure that we kind of get through everything, though. Do we have any other updates on cases?
Well, we do, and this kind of goes to what you were saying about how lawsuits may affect rules and laws and that sort of thing. And this goes to the chemical hair straightener cases that we've talked about previously. And the FDA now is considering banning hair straightening chemical products.
Wow.
Right. And again, this comes up. I mean, the study came out, the lawsuits started getting filed, and that's when you really start seeing the number of people who are affected. And this is now a proposed rule. It's not in place yet. But the way that the process works is that they propose this rule that potentially banning the products, and then they will get public comments. And, of course, I mean, the companies don't want them banned, but they will ultimately, then make a decision about banning the products.
Yeah.
I mean, we've talked about this. I don't remember which episode. One of the early episodes. Certainly, we can put a link for anybody who's interested in that. But just to kind of recap briefly, these hair straightening products, if you use them relatively regularly, greatly increase your risk of uterine cancer.
Yeah.
And of course, it primarily affects Black and other women of color who use these more often on their hair.
Yeah.
So a lot of just kind of troubling aspects to the whole thing, the marketing it to kids, but I won't go crazy on it. I mean, I will go crazy on it, but not right now because because like you said, we have a lot of things to cover. But this is a major development that the products may actually be banned in the fuwill.
And that's all hair relaxers. It's not just the ones that are being directly connected to
Well, the
this.
ones with the specific chemicals that
Okay.
are likely to increase. It's got the formaldehyde, and they're called endocrine disruptors. So those are the ones that would be banned.
And it's going to be something to see, because I think a lot of people probably weren't aware. I'm sure there are people using it right now today, have been using these last few weeks and had no idea about the potential risks and issues coming up. And then it's going to be from one day to another where they're just not going to be on the shelves anymore.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, and sometimes that's what has to happen. And where people, again, we talk about this, we see it in the news, but it's a very brief flash in the pan on most news stations. And so many people have missed it. People who are regularly straightening their hair may not even know about it.
Yeah.
So it takes something like this where you actually take the shit off the shelves so they can't use it.
And then they look it up online. They're like, "Where's my hair relaxer?"
Right. But
And
I mean, it's for their protection.
Yeah.
Because not everybody hears about this. I mean, think how long it took to get people to realize that smoking caused cancer. Holy crap. I mean, and a lot of publicity. And these companies are certainly not putting that publicity out there.
Yeah, I think that is what needs to happen. It's going to probably wake up a lot of people, to make them research, Google it, figure out what's really going on. And I'm sure if and when this does happen, once it gets taken off the shelves, I wouldn't be surprised if there was a large influx of calls across the country of people that were using this, women that were using this, realized that there were some possible issues connected to it, and then kind of connecting the dots and reaching out to an attorney.
Yeah, and then realizing, oh my gosh, maybe that's why I at age 30 have been diagnosed with uterine cancer.
Yeah. So, and it's good to see from the FDA. I know I've learned quite a bit about the FDA, and they don't always do things as well as they probably could or should. But this does seem like a kind of a win on their side, where the issue came up, and it seems relatively quickly that they acted on this, right?
Yeah, and again, I think that you have to give some credit to the lawyers who.
Yeah, of course.
Of course, you're going to give credit to lawyers. But again, when these lawsuits get filed, that's when you start getting the publicity, and you start seeing the number of people who are affected, and the lawyers are putting their time and their energy and their finances in to really building these cases and determining the connections and basically, and actually, that kind of goes to also in the update during MTMP, they were saying more and more studies are coming out, and the science is just getting stronger and stronger, supporting this link. So and again, when the cases start out, it looks like a strong link. Is it or is it not? And then additional studies happen, and sometimes it turns out that maybe it's not.
Yeah.
But it looks like in this case, it is going in the direction that the cases are becoming stronger, the science is getting stronger, and that would then influence the FDA to say, hey, maybe this is a product that should not be on our shelves. It should not be sold to primarily women and children.
Some cases just start snowballing, it seems like. Yeah. Once kind of the witch is shown behind the curtain, and then everyone kind of realizes the connection there, and the FDA has to act upon it.
Isn't it Oz who's behind the curtain?
Oz? I thought it was... Oh, you're right. It is Oz.
I think the witch is in the castle with the flying monkeys.
Yeah, you're right. It's been a while. It's been a while since I've seen that one. I was going for a good analogy there. I missed the mark.
That's all right. It's close. I knew what you were getting at.
I definitely want to continue updating on that, though, because I am really interested to see the effect that it will have to have those taken off the shelves. Because, I mean, with it, going back to the Zantac, is that I had no idea there was any issue. I would have kept taking them, even probably to this day. Even if I knew there was some issue, like you said, it helps a ton. I would have been like, oh, well, I'm sure I'm not going to be one of those people. It just helps a lot. I'm going to keep on doing it. And there's people using these hair relaxers probably have no idea, because this is definitely something that it's pretty niche. I'm sure a majority of news stations aren't going to be reporting on it. And even the ones that are, like you said, flashed in the plant.
Yeah, just briefly when there's a lawsuit.
Yeah.
But, and what you said is kind of the perfect example that, you were using this medication and it was in the news enough that it was recalled, but you hadn't seen it. It wasn't, for whatever reason, that was not something that you saw, you knew about. You're looking for it on the shelf, and had it been on the shelf, you would have continued to use it.
Yeah.
So again, getting it off the shelf is the only way to protect people if this is a really seriously dangerous product. And here we go. This is the one way like you said, that women are going to stop using it. They walk in and it's not there anymore, and it's going to potentially save lives.
And so if a FDA ban does happen, what does that mean for the status of these cases? I mean, I would imagine this would push it forward a lot quicker.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it would...
Yeah, I mean, it
is it kind of like a done deal at that point? Because the FDA is now openly recognizing, wow, this is a problem. There are issues. Maybe it's not these specific cancers or these specific problems, but it's too much of a problem for us to leave it out there.
I mean, it's never a done deal, and they're always going to argue. I mean, like, for example, Zantac, the same exact thing. This is a problem. It's a carcinogen. You can't sell it. But we're not going to sell the cases. We still don't think it's a problem. We still don't think still don't think people are getting cancer from it. So they'll still continue to fight it, but it makes it so much stronger and such a harder fight, and so much more likely that, yes, they're going to resolve the cases. So.
That's good. And did you find this out at the conference this week, or was this something that came out in the news?
Oh, that was both actually.
Yeah, I'm assuming it was going to be big news at the conference. I mean, this is something that's new. I know that they're pushing it at one of the previous ones as well.
Well, we talked about the hair relaxers. I was in a group meeting on that, and then we talked about how the science was getting stronger. But it wasn't until actually I got back that that it came out that they were proposing it. In fact, let's see if I see the actual date on this. It was maybe like a day or two after I got back that this came out that the FDA was going to ban it. So that actually hadn't hit the news when nobody I knew talked about it at the conference. But yeah, that's kind of breaking news.
Breaking news.
Always. You heard exactly.
And it won't be a flash in the pan here. We'll be bringing it back up in the future.
All right. Well, we should probably get into our main topic, because it's a really interesting.
Let's do it.
Interesting topic. And so that is the troubled teen industry. And, this is all completely new to me. And this was why Paris Hilton was at Mass Torts Made Perfect. So I didn't know that much about Paris Hilton. I mean, I know who she was, and, she really kind of started the whole selfies, and she did the first reality show, and she was like the precursor to the Kardashians. I mean, she was like it, right?
Yeah, I mean, but that's before my time, but
yeah, well,
even I know of her and everything.
Yeah, and so, but what I didn't know about her, and what really, I guess, nobody knew about her, was that she had been basically kidnapped in the middle of the night, legal kidnapping, and taken to one of these facilities. She actually went through 4 different facilities. And the last one is like a really infamous one, Provo Canyon School, that is, not famous, infamous.
It's a nice name.
Yeah, well, it's in Provo, Utah. But so anyway, what these things are, they are like you hear them called like boot camps. What else do they call them? Wilderness camps. They're military-style camps, but they're places where they take these teens who are acting out, and acting out could mean, they're smoking cigarettes, or they're staying out late, or they're not meeting curfew, or potentially they're involved in juvenile criminal activities.
Whatever the parents kind of determine as acting out.
Well, so it can be, they call it voluntary, where your parents basically sign you up or commit you to these places. But then there's also also people who go there through the state. So they might be, say, foster children who are acting up, or they've gone through the criminal justice system, and they're sent to these facilities. And I mean, it's just crazy. I mean, I knew that these things had existed, and I figured it sucked to go there, but I had no idea like the type of abuse that happens and how easy it is. Because, you know, she was talking about, well, first of all, when you first get committed or sent to one of these places, they automatically say you're not going to talk to your parents or anybody for 30 days.
Jesus.
I mean, you're completely cut off.
Yeah.
I mean, you get in there, they like strip search you, they take everything away from you. You have to earn privileges. You know, if you misbehave, you end up getting stuck in solitary confinement. It's like a prison. No, I mean, seriously, I was so shocked to hear this stuff. But, you know, then when they finally are allowed to speak with their parents, everything's listened to, just like you were in prison. And she was saying if she even started to complain or say anything, they would cut the calls off.
No way.
Yeah. And I mean, like in prison, you know, we write a letter, but if you say anything about they're mistreating you or they're doing, you know, watching you shower, you know, having male people watch you shower naked. I mean, come on. It's crazy stuff. I mean, there's all kinds of, anyway, but if you start to mention any of that, they tear their letters up. It doesn't go out.
Wow.
Yeah. And so she was talking about this, and the way that they take a lot of these kids is extremely traumatic. They come into they're asleep in their beds, and, you know, two big burly men come in, wake them up, handcuff them, and drag them out.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy. And then she was talking about, you know, and she's like 42 now. She was saying, I mean, she still has insomnia. She can't sleep. She has nightmares regularly about the things that happen to her in these various facilities. And she was in 4 different ones and was apparently really good at escaping. She escaped from the first 3 of them. Actually, one of the stories she told was kind of funny. She was saying that I guess they had her zip tied. They weren't zip tied, and they were going to take her on a plane to the facility. And she was saying she had to go to the bathroom, and she was, I promise I'll behave. I'm really embarrassed. Please take the zip ties off, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, they take the zip ties off. She somehow escapes from the airport, gets in a cab, and then she goes to a Hilton hotel. Anyway, she was caught.
Yeah.
And sent to the next one. But the final one that she ended up at, this Provo Canyon School, is really well known. I mean, high security. There was no way she was going to escape from there. Mm-hmm. So anyway, and this is another one of these cases that really fits our prioritizing profits. Because, as you can imagine, these facilities make a shit ton of money.
Oh, I'm sure the tuition there is absurd.
Big business. $30,000 a month.
Oh, a month. That is insane.
Well, and this is averages, but $30,000 a month.
Is that per person, or is that
per
okay?
kid.
Jesus Christ! Yeah.
$23 billion annually in public funds. So kids that go through the state, $23 billion.
Oh my! Wow.
Well, and so these facilities crop up, and they're not well regulated. Mm-hmm. They have, you know, like she was saying, they medicate them. I mean, they're putting them on all kinds of medications. She was telling a story about trying to figure out how not to swallow the pills, and then somebody else told on her because they pit the kids against each other, and, you know, one will get favorable treatment if they tattle on the other one. Anyway, and so she ended up getting in solitary confinement when they found out she wasn't taking the pills. But they don't even have a doctor supervising. I mean, they're giving them prescription medications.
How's that legal?
It's not. That's the problem. It's absolutely not. I mean, it's just insane.
It seems like, I mean, it sounds reminiscent of like the for-profit prisons. They just there's a lot of corners cut in it, and a lot of the money's coming from the government, and a lot of the practices taking place are just not necessarily not well regulated, and there's a lot of, like I say, cut corners there. Where's the case here? Is it the children that are suing these facilities? Is it the parents? Where is this coming from?
It could be both. It could be both. And there's been, and again, this became, so Paris was saying that she did this documentary in 2020 called This Is Paris. And we just watched it last night. We saw little clips at the conference, but really interesting documentary. And she she said that, she really changed in this process because it was not supposed to be about this at all. And at one point, she had spoken with the director, let her know something. I don't remember how it came up, if it was in the context of the nightmares or whatever. She told her a little bit about the story, and she said, but I don't want that to be my story. That's not my story. And the director had said to her, think about all of the kids who don't have a voice like you, who didn't come out of this and turn into a successful person. Because lots of these kids, they commit suicide. They're in and out of the, criminal justice system. They become drug addicts. I mean, they are really scarred, traumatized, just torn apart by this experience, and they don't bounce back. And so the director was saying to her, you have this opportunity, you have this public persona, you have a voice, and you coming out against this and sharing your story can really help lots of kids. And so she decided to do that. And that was why she showed up at MTMP to talk to all of us and say, hey, sue these people.
Yeah.
And there are a couple of organizations that are getting really involved in it. They're pushing for more regulation. And kind of how this got out in the news too is both Paris and then a couple of really horrible situations that happened recently. Now, historically, I guess there was this place called the Dozier School for Boys, and there were like 80 kids who were killed there over the years. Unmarked graves. I mean, crazy shit, right?
How is that even possible?
Well, it shouldn't be possible. And the state of Florida actually came out and issued a formal apology and put up.
They've done a formal apology. Okay.
Sorry about that. No, and then put up a, what do they call it? I don't know, a place to recognize the boys, a monument. So a couple of really horrible situations. And there was one, let's see. Oh, Cornelius Frederick. This happened, a 16-year-old boy. This was through Lakeside Academy in Michigan. And he was restrained because he was throwing food in the cafeteria. 7 male staff members got on top of him, crushed him and asphyxiated him, killed him.
Oh my God.
16 years old. And this one got a lot of publicity. This was in 2020. And then also a young girl, 17-year-old Naomi Wood. She was at Lakeland Girls Academy. And I noticed a lot of this lake stuff, Lakeside, Lakeland.
Yeah, it's supposed to make it sound like
it's so beautiful, bucolic. And then they're just beating the shit out of these kids.
It's a vacation spot. It's lakeside.
Right.
You get
Beautiful.
to put your feet up in the sun.
Yeah, take your little rowboat out. No, they're crushing and asphyxiating kids. It's horrifying, right?
Christ, yeah.
Yeah, and so this Naomi, she was sick, complained that she was having stomach issues, and they showed in the documents 20 times they gave her Pepto-Bismol, but they didn't ever take her to a doctor. Then she began vomiting for 2 days.
2 days.
2 days. Still didn't take her to a doctor. Gave her soup, and then they came and they found she had died.
What happened?
The autopsy said that she suffered from a seizure, so it could have been from dehydration. I don't know all the details on that, but I mean, complete neglect. I mean, had she been taken to a medical facility, there's no question she would not have died.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there are various different angles, negligence, recklessness, false advertising. I mean, like you said, they're advertising that these are beautiful, wonderful, safe places. Yeah. Send your kids here. We're going to fix them for you. You don't have to deal with, their antics, and medical malpractice. Again, they're having, a lot of these employees are minimum wage, people who can't get jobs other places, because who wants to be out in the middle of Provo, Utah, in the middle of nowhere in the forest with a bunch of troubled teens?
Yeah.
I mean, no medical training, no counseling. They're not helping these kids deal with mental health issues. They're doing this tough love thing, and there's no indication that actually works. Yeah. And so these kids coming out of this are just oftentimes destroyed.
Yeah, I mean, and it makes sense. It's interesting, the similarities. I mean, like you said, with this tough love, there's no like rehabilitation aspect of it, really. It's just kind of like almost putting them in their place, putting them in a corner.
Beating their fight out of them.
Yeah, which is similar to like the prison system, right? Like that's the entire argument, is that there is no rehabilitation. If anything, and going to prison, you end up learning more about how to be a criminal, and kind of just puts you farther behind. And I think a lot of the kids that are going here, especially through the state, they already have a lot of issues. They already are struggling with a lot of stuff, and
they need help and treatment and counseling, and
adding all of this extra trauma on top of it is only going to cause more problems. And so it seems like there's clearly a lot of issues, and there's wrongdoing happening for sure. Would each case be individual to the facility itself? I'm sure a lot of these problems are widespread across all of them, but really you have to take each one individually, and it wouldn't necessarily be a mass tort type situation.
Yeah, it probably wouldn't be a mass tort, but the cases might be consolidated if there is a certain number of them against a particular facility. And some of these big facilities, they have them all over the country.
Yeah.
I mean, some of them have multiple locations. So they would be individual cases. And again, with the MDL, cases are always individual cases, but they're consolidated. At this point, there isn't any type of consolidation. So they would be individual lawsuits. But it's definitely something, I was pretty horrified. It was something I didn't know a lot about, but I definitely got kind of excited about it. Like, this would be the kind of case that makes a difference in people's lives. I mean, not only, helping kids maybe that have been through this to get some compensation so that they can actually get some treatment that will help them, but also preventing other kids from having to be, to go through these types of situations, shutting down these places that aren't, getting some better regulation in place, making sure that they do have a medical director, they have doctors on site, they have licensed counselors, licensed therapists, that there's treatment, and it's not just, a prison-like abuse holding facility for kids, and again, I mean, teens can do some bad shit and some criminal stuff, but so much of this, I mean, like her situation was she was like sneaking out and going to clubs because she lived in New York City, and her parents kind of threw her hands up. But I mean, again, I mean, kids are, they're doing, trying marijuana, doing different drugs like that. Is this going to help them? I mean, again, with no medical supervision, not really.
Yeah, I want no real rehabilitation, no counseling, like you said. I've heard of stories like this before. I've seen, documentaries of people, or like in movies, where the parents sign the kid up to this and essentially just release them, right? And then, like you said, two big burly guys come in the middle of the night and essentially legally kidnap you, which is so insane to me, that to think that is legal, that your parents can put you through that. And like you said, definitely there's a lot of teens that are difficult, and some go through some more issues than others. But either way, I mean, that is just such like a defenseless, nothing you can do situation where you just have to be kidnapped. You have to go to this facility. And then once you get there, you're not allowed to talk to your parents. You're not allowed to talk to anyone You're just thrown into this new place with no communication to the outside world with these type of conditions. I mean, that's just insane to me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you think about it. I mean, think about the trust issues. I mean, your parents, you may be pissed off at them and, air quote, hate them. Yeah. But I mean, they still take care of you, presumably. And obviously they want you to be they think what they're doing is the right thing, and certainly with Paris Hilton, her mother was on there and she was pretty horrified because Paris had never told her some of the things that happened to her there. I mean, she just got out and didn't want to have anything to do with it. But I mean, just how that just destroys your, sense of trust in anybody, that somebody would just allow someone to come and drag you out of your bed.
And so you did start this with how it's cases that we are handling. Would it be a situation where people that have gone or were sent there should reach out if they've, had any problems, if there was anything, any trauma? Because, I mean, I'm assuming there are some specific cases where, for example, there's deaths or injuries or lack of treatment. But I'm assuming a majority of these cases are more of the psychological trauma, PTSD side of things, which is a little bit harder to quantify.
Well, yeah. So for like the two cases we talked about, and I think that was kind of how I veered off into that. Those are cases where the parents are now bringing lawsuits against the facilities because their children died in their care. But certainly there would, and if a child is released and is still under 18, the parents could bring the case, but then somebody who has been released and is over 18 could bring the case on their own behalf.
And so essentially anyone that has gone and has had issues, it's probably good for them to reach out and at least kind of have a conversation, which, does seem kind of similar to the Boy Scout situation where it's almost iceberg. Like, we're seeing the tip of the iceberg. I'm assuming a lot of these problems and experiences are things that people didn't talk about, didn't want to talk about. You mentioned Paris Hilton, how she didn't even want to mention it to her parents.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming that's how most people are. And so once this starts coming to light, I'm sure more people will start coming out about their terrible experiences. And even then, I'm sure there's still going to be people in the back that just aren't ready to really bring it up and address it.
Yeah. Well, and one of the things she said too is that, when, they tell you, we're going to say you're lying. Your parents aren't going to believe you. Well, and first of all, these are kids who've already been in trouble. And so, are you going to believe the kid? I mean, quite frankly, if they called and said they were beating the crap out of me, I'd have been like, no, this is a good facility. Look at the brochures. And
you know how much this costs?
It costs $30,000. It can't be. She just wants me to come get her. I mean, I could see that. And then the kids are going to say, well, you're right. They're not going to believe me. And so then they get out. And do they think people are going to start believing them then? No. And so one of the organizations that was there with Paris and put on a talk is called Unsilenced. And so, and that's actually a good organization too. If somebody has gone through this experience to reach out to, they provide resources and support. And I think just also being in a situation where you can talk to other people who have been through that and they know that, yes, these things do happen and we're not lying. And that can be very, very helpful and very supportive for people.
Yeah, and I guess that would probably lead me to my next question is if there are people listening that want to help or maybe experience this and want to look for support or anything like that. Did they touch on kind of any of those support groups, support systems?
Yeah. This Unsilenced organization is definitely where I would start.
Yeah.
They have a lot of resources and support. And again, just like one of the things in Paris's that documentary, they found several of the other teens who were there at the same time as her, and they kind of all came together and they did little videos, on behalf of the organization where they put this like red tape over their mouths and they do a list of all of the, things that they've experienced since being in the facility. And again, it's just letting people know, hey, we hear you, we see you, we know that this happened to us too, and it's okay to talk about and get the support that you need.
It's important that's going on and that they are reaching out and it's coming to light. I still think it's just so crazy that this is such a heavily government-supported thing as well, government's funded aspect.
Right. Well, they pay the fees if people get sent there through the court. But, and one of the other things that they were talking about, like parents would get like these $5,000 off the tuition for referring other parents to get their kids in there, and then potential kickbacks. There's all kinds of crazy things because it's such a big money-making business, and the more teens they get in there, and then, their overhead, they keep that low.
$30K a month, $1,000 a day to keep a kid. And I bet you they're spending maybe $50-$60 a day on them, food, medication. And they're not even having a doctor on staff, minimum wage for most of the workers. A lot of this sounds like it's just getting pocketed and really squeezing from what they get.
Big business. Again, prioritizing profits. That's exactly what.
Yeah, over children.
What it's about. Yeah, over children's safety.
God, that's terrible. Well, that's great that Paris Hilton came out and spoke on it. I think it's really incredible to see her kind of stepping up, and I'm sure this was really difficult. It was a difficult topic to kind of go back to, bring up those memories. I'm glad that the director, kind of talked her into a little bit or convinced her. I think he brought up a really good point that there's these facilities are still ongoing. Hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of kids have gone through them, are going through them, and they don't have a voice. And even if they're older and they're adults, they don't have a voice, not like that. And so she's bringing a light to this issue and knowing where to take it. Taking it to you guys, who the attorneys that are able to act upon it in a different way, more than just kind of spreading awareness, but actually hopefully inciting some change.
Yeah. Using her fame for good.
Yeah, that's good to see.
Yeah. So it was, big stuff at MTMP.
Yeah, it's good info. I mean, we mentioned it last week or the week before that we would be hearing a little bit, or hopefully hearing and learning more info. And it sounds like we got it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's more too, and we'll talk next week about some other things. But we only have an hour, so can't go into all of them.
So if anyone did go through any of these facilities, definitely recommend them to reach out, as well as to reach out to that organization, Unsilenced. It sounds like they definitely have some good support systems, and I think that is definitely usually it's the most difficult step is kind of reaching out. But once you do, I think, from what I understand, it helps. It helps a lot, and that's why those organizations are there. And I appreciate you listening and explaining it to us. We are kind of coming to a close here. Was there anything else that you did want to touch on or go over before we close out?
I would say we did have one question. I think we can hold off on the news stories for next week. So we hop into one quick question?
Let's do it.
Okay. Yeah. So the question was, don't these lawsuits discourage companies from making new drugs that could save lives? So what's that face for?
It's just, I think I understand the question. I understand it. But I think, like, for example, the AIDS one is a good example of why it doesn't discourage them.
Right. Well, I mean, the thing is that making, these drugs are it's big money. I mean, obviously, all of the corporations that we're talking about, they're multi-billion-dollar corporations, right? Yeah. So it is big business to produce these drugs and to have them under patent for periods of time. And again, the lawsuits, they can so easily avoid lawsuits. Just be honest, okay? I mean, if you know that there's a risk of a medication, just list it in the warnings. If it's in the warnings, and then people can make the decision about whether or not to use the medication. They can make plenty of money without ending up in lawsuits. I mean, it's the companies that hide things, that know about them, and that really do prioritize their profits over safety. Those are the ones where, the lawsuits are filed. And there has to be something to rein the companies in. Yeah. And if it's not, if there isn't the risk of them being sued, I mean, just think how crazy things would be. We know things are crazy even with the lawsuits that happen. So I would say, and again, I mean, it's a little bit of a skeptical question. I don't think anybody wants companies just to be completely unregulated, not called to task when they're caught doing.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because it almost comes from the perspective that they are making these drugs specifically to save lives, which from what we've discussed is more of a secondary to anything. Is the first one is money. I mean, with the AIDS drug situation where they had a better drug and they were just kind of keeping it under the table and not releasing it until their patent on the first one ran out. I mean, if they were really concerned about saving lives and that was their main priority, they would have released the better drug that worked more effectively and reduced a lot of the side effects and prevented a lot of the issues that the first one did. So
they would have avoided lawsuits.
And they would have avoided lawsuits. It would have been a double win-win.
Exactly.
Saving lives, avoided lawsuits, and making money. But it's just not necessarily that simple. And, these lawsuits are here to prevent situations like that from coming up. It's to push them to hopefully make the right decision of informing their customers, their users of their drug, and being open with what they're working on.
Well, exactly, being open. And when they, even aftermarket, when they find out that a drug has a side effect that maybe they didn't realize about, letting then the doctors know and the patients know, so that they can make the right health decision for themselves. And if you don't have the lawsuits, then they're never going to do that. Yeah. I mean, yes, there's a balance, but I mean, again, it's not like people are running out and filing a bunch of frivolous lawsuits because lawyers put up millions of their dollars to do this and their time, and so this is a high risk business. It's not, we're not just running around suing people willy-nilly, because if we do that, we're going to go bankrupt. If it's not a good case, if it's not a strong case that ultimately you're going to get reimbursed for your expenses, you're going to go bankrupt. Those attorneys aren't in business anymore. So I know I'm beating a dead horse with that one.
Well, there's also a lot of cases that don't have to do with these type of drugs that would save lives or are serious. For example, two of them that we talked about, Zantac and the hair relaxers. To my knowledge, those aren't necessarily saving lives. But what they are doing is that they're misleading customers. They're causing problems that weren't disclosed, whether they knew it or not. And the hair relaxers specifically, that's something that's not even a drug.
Well,
it's
it's a cosmetic thing, exactly. And again, if maybe, I want my hair to look good. Everybody wants their hair to look good. But if it's going to kill me, I will have my hair look not that way.
Well, and if it is going to kill me, I'd like to know, and then I'll only use it on really important days, on photo shoot day,
Exactly. Podcast
day. Then all right, I might risk it for the biscuit, but.
All right, so I guess that's our answer. We could have gone into more detail. But
I think we covered it pretty well.
We're good. Okay.
Well, it is coming up on the hour. Appreciate everyone for tuning in, hanging out with us. We hope you enjoyed last week's video. Big thanks to Fernie for putting that together.
Yes,
he is an absolute whiz behind the scenes. Massive shout out. We hope you enjoyed today's show. Definitely got a lot of new information from this last week. MTMP. It was super interesting to hear about the Zantac settlement. The hair relaxers, it's good to hear the FDA is finally kind of waking up with the possible concerns there. And then Paris Hilton doing what I think surprised a lot of people is she's coming out and giving a voice to people that don't have a voice in a big possible
kudos
case
to
there.
her for sure.
So if you have Zantac, reach out to us. Troubled Teen Industry with the facilities. If you've been in one of those and you need a support system or you want to reach out, feel free to reach out to us, as well as Unsilenced. But with that being said, I hope everyone has a fantastic week. Be sure to check us out on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. If you got any questions, throw it down in the comments. We'll definitely address it on one of our shows. And if it's something you don't want to post out in public, that's okay. You can also email us at podcast@showardlaw.com. And even if it's just a story, comment, question, whatever it is, we'd love to hear it. We love hearing from you guys. But with that being said, I hope you guys have a fantastic week. Prioritizing profits.
Dangerous drug and product cases.